CO, Jason Christie here, professional angler. The 68th annual Cherokee National Holiday is a month away, and unfortunately this year we're not going to gather as we normally do. It's going to be all video. You know, we've been asked to create a video to kind of represent our fishing day. And you know, I travel around the country pulling this boat with that big truck right there, throwing a bait caster, trying to make a living. And today we're going to do away with that. You know, we're going to kind of walk you through on how I grew up, the history, you know, my early years, walking the creeks, going to ponds fishing, walking the banks of the lake. Cherokee County and the Cherokee Nation, we have a lot of water. There's water everywhere. And there's a lot of opportunities to catch fish, whether it be bass, crappie, perch, catfish, really whatever you want, everywhere. I mean, you can literally 5-minute drive from anywhere in the Cherokee Nation and you can be around some kind of water that has fish. So today we're going to leave the boat at the house. I'm going to take this jersey off and we're going to fish kind of how I grew up fishing. And you know, it's a lot of fun. I spend a lot of time in the summer going to the creek, you know, with an ultralight and just catching fish. It's a lot. It kind of takes me back to the roots, and also it's just fun. I mean, it's something different. It's something that I did as a kid. So follow along with us today, and we're going to catch some fish for sure. And hopefully you learn something. You know, you can take this to the water near you and catch some fish. So we're on one of my favorite creeks as a kid in Cherokee County. I actually, growing up, I caught crawdads in this creek. You know, fish, swam, ate hamburgers, all that kind of stuff. And really, it's simple fishing. I mean, I make a living traveling across the country, but this creek fishes just like the bigger lakes and the rivers do. And that's why, you know, that's where I learned a lot of my stuff. You know, this creek has current in it, and these fish are going to be in the same places as they would in a bigger river. You know, we're standing on a gravel bar now. You can look up and you can see gravel bar where it gets shallow if you don't know what that is. And then you have these deep holes over there. You can see the bank where it's kind of steep, and that's where these fish will get. A lot of times whenever they want to eat, they'll get up there closer to that gravel bar, and you'll actually see them chasing. And when they're in like the resting mode or just the sitting mode, they'll get over there in that deeper water and just sit still. But you know, I put together a little box that I can carry in my pocket, and when I walk the creek, these are some of the things that I throw. When I'm walking, I always try to throw a topwater up in front of me in case there's a bigger fish, you know, and he's aggressive, he wants to eat. So you got a little popar, and we got a road runner, a beetle spin. I probably caught more fish as a kid in the creeks and ponds on a beetle spin than anything. If you want to take one bait and just go fishing off the bank in a creek or a pond, a beetle spin is hard to beat. And then a shaky head. This is what we call a shaky head. All it is a jig head with a little worm. And if I'm not around really big fish, you know, the further I get up these creek and we turn into, you know, little smallmouth and little largemouth, I'll take that worm and cut it, you know, in half and make it even smaller. You can catch perch on it, just whatever. But that's pretty simple. There's other baits that I've used in the past. A little rebel crawdad is good, but these are some of the ones that I picked out, you know, for today. So we're going to walk up through here and see if we can catch a few. Like I said, we're going to start with the topwater and start in this deep hole right here. One thing is, and I'm kind of the same way fishing in a boat as I am walking. Like, I don't spend a whole lot of time in one spot unless I don't have a lot of water to move around. Say I'm in a pond, you know, you're limited to fishing that pond, but I'm going to move. If I don't get a bite pretty quick, I'm just going to keep moving until I do get a bite and find those fish. And it's the same way fishing on the lake. Even though, you know, there's water everywhere, there's not fish everywhere. There'll be 90% of the fish live in 10% of the water. And that's in a creek, in a lake, everywhere. And we're going to watch for snakes. I'm not a fan of snakes. Smallmouth. No, it's not. He's got a big one with him. This is a smallmouth. He's got like a 3-pound largemouth with him. We're gonna try something. Better catch one we got. So he was on that log over there. This right here is kind of a gravel bar, then you can see there's kind of a deep stretch. A lot of times they'll either be on the bottom where it's shallow or on the upper end if they're feeding. He choked it. So that right there is just an old smallmouth. Real pretty nice one, honestly, for the creek. And when I reeled it in, there was about a 3-pound largemouth with him. I think the largemouth was one that hit the first time when I missed him. And I did not have my drag set good enough. You know, back when I used to fish a whole lot as a kid, we used lures some, but also, I mean, some of these fish are hard to catch because of the clear water. If you can take a crawdad or a hellgrammite or something like that and put it on a drop shot and they will not turn it down. Walk on up. There he is. He won't eat it. Oh, he got it. I seen him come out from underneath that log. This is that other one that was following that one a while ago. He's gonna jump. That's not him. He's not. That's a different fish. No, it is him. I kind of tricked him. I threw that pop-R over there on the bank and let the current drift it down like real natural. Fooled him. Come here. There, buddy. He's skinny. That for a creek is a big one. I mean, I've caught bigger, and that's why usually on the first pass I'll throw like a bigger bait, top water, you know, something like that. There he goes. You know, as a kid, one thing I didn't have was sunglasses that I could, you know, polarized glasses. You could still see, but with these glasses, I mean, that fish was 25 yards out there and I seen him coming. You can get glasses, you know, as long as they're polarized. There's some cheaper ones. So kind of what I'm looking for, you know, fishing these creeks like this is, I mean, I'm standing knee deep, but you can look around and over here on this side is the deeper, you know, a little bit deeper, and obviously it's shaded. So that's all a good area. And anytime you have a log laying out, that's good. But just some of these little deeper holes is where these fish will hide. I mean, you can catch one anywhere, but that's kind of what I concentrate on. And then also, if you look way up the creek there, you see the creek gets tight and you can see ripples, which means it's creating current. That's the head of this deeper hole area. And that to me is probably the most consistent area would be right up there. But just any kind of deeper water shade, it's just, that's the thing, growing up on a creek, it's just the same thing in the lake. Any kind of structure, shade, you know, it's really, it's all the same, whether you're fishing big lakes or the creek. Should have a bite right there. The good thing about too on fishing the creek is it's always clear. You don't have to make a perfect cast. These fish will travel a long ways usually to get your bait, so it's not like you have to lay it right next to the bank or anything like that. I mean, I've seen them travel 15, 20 feet to get a bait. The key is just making it natural. There's a little one. You're gonna catch a lot of these. And this, I mean, on a spinning rod with light line, still fun. He might grow up one day and be a 5-pounder, you never know. Took a while, but we got him. Pulling against the current, where are you at? You can get black spots on him. He didn't want to bite. The reason I say that is walking up, we made 4 or 5 casts over there to that log and he didn't bite. But once we got by him, he chased shad. There was something that triggered him to eat over there. And then us changing the angle of that bait made him bite. See you, buddy. So now we're on Lake Tenkiller and we're walking the bank fishing, and I used to do this quite a bit when I was a kid also. The thing that's different about a lake is there's so many different species of fish that you can catch. Sand bass, catfish, bass, perch, crappie. The cool thing is about that is you can catch anything. You know, I've caught sand bass while I was bass fishing, catfish. You don't really know what you're going to catch, but we're going to kind of target bass today. One thing that a person needs to understand, you need to learn, is being able to read the land. You don't know how deep it is out there. We're not in a boat, we don't have electronics. So you can kind of look around, like down there you see a bluff that's pretty steep. More times than not, there's going to be deep water around that bluff. And as it comes toward us, the bank flattens out. You know, so in between that area is the transition. It gets deep to shallow. Now year-round, that's a good area to fish. If I had to pick one area to fish year-round from the bank, or even in a boat, I'm going to pick that transition area because there's always going to be fish around there. In the wintertime, in the hot part of the summer, I'm going to be closer to that deep water. In the spring and in the fall, I'm going to be more towards the shallower stuff, you know, when the fish spawn and when the fish start chasing bait. There's a lot of things you can catch. You know, we're on Tenkiller, and as a rule, in March, you can go up to Horseshoe Bend, Carter's Landing, fish off the bank, catch catfish, the sand bass run, and there's a lot of people that do that, and you can fill your ice chest full of sand bass. My favorite fish to fish off of the bank is crappie, because in the spring, you can bet on the lakes and even in the ponds and stuff, these crappie are going to spawn on this pea gravel. This is called pea gravel. You bring your lawn chair, you throw you a floater out there with a minnow or a crappie jig, and you just fish. It's relaxing, and you can catch a lot of fish doing that. And the cool thing about crappie is you can take a few of them home to eat. So, you know, we're going to fish around a little bit and see if we can catch one. You know, some of the baits I brought today is just a topwater. This is similar to the bait that we were throwing in the creek. It's just a popper, a little bit bigger. This here is a Texas rig worm. Actually, it's a shakehead worm. It's weedless, and it's important in that you got to remember fishing off the bank. When you cast out there, it's going to be deep. You're always, if you're fishing something on the bottom, you're going to be dragging uphill. So it's hard to throw something that has an open hook. You're going to get hung up a lot. So you want to throw something, if you're going to fish on the bottom, you want to throw something that's weedless. You know, I got a little crankbait here. Even though this bait dives, it's not going to dive very deep, so I can still throw it out and fish it back. One thing that I think a lot of people make mistakes on bank fishing I've watched my kids do this. They walk down the bank, they pick one spot, and they cast. And if they don't get a bite, they're done. I kind of treat it the same bait fishing as I do in the boat. I'm gonna fish, I'm gonna move around a lot if I can. I'm gonna walk down the bank until I start getting some bites, and then I may settle in and fish that area a lot. Just because you can fish here, that doesn't mean there's a lot of fish there. So you wanna move around until you find an area that's got some fish. You know, a lot of the parks, Pettit Bay, Cherokee Landing, you know, Standing Rock, they have good areas, pretty open, it's not snaky. You can walk around and you can fish. And the good thing is a lot of those get south wind, which blows a lot of bait in. So we're gonna fish around here and see if we can, I'm gonna throw a top water a little bit, and then we're gonna pick up that shaky head and see if we can catch some. On a day like today, with it being sunny, you know, my bet is probably something closer to the bottom is gonna work, but it's always good. Like right there was a fish that come up and chase bait or something. I'll keep that top water laying around and just pick it up and cast it out there where they bust. And I think these are sand bass, which they're fun to catch. They're getting a little ways out there for me. There's one up there. On the last cast when I threw out there, I felt like a little patch of rocks, and that's always good with the bottom bait. What you want to always remember is you don't have to always throw straight out. I caught him straight out, but there's some, bye buddy, there's a few rocks out there. One of my favorite casts is kind of like down the bank, but if you get a bite fishing off of the bank, like that little patch of rocks out there, you want to mark it. Like when I set the hook, I marked it with that brown house up there, just in case there may be more fish down there. So standing in this spot, I know that fish came right towards that brown house. So we're gonna make several casts there before we move on down the bank. And it feels like it's about 10 foot deep right there. There's that little patch of rock right there. Kind of liking this fishing off the bank. It's cool. Not as hot. All right guys, so now we're at a pond. Up until I was the age of 12, 13, that's all I fished in were ponds. I had a friend and literally every Saturday we drove from pond to pond to pond fishing, and we caught perch and crappie and bass. Most of all, we were just out fishing and not getting in trouble. If there's one bait I had to pick that over the years I've probably caught the most fish, is a beetle spin. I mean, you can catch perch, crappie, bass, anything that lives in the pond will bite a beetle spin. I only brought 3 lures with me today. Also a wacky rig worm. It's just a worm that's hooked in the middle. Reason I want that is I want the bait to fall slowly. A lot of these ponds are silty, mucky bottoms, and I feel like the fish live more in the upper water column, so when I throw that worm out there, it's gonna sink really, really slow. And then of course, I brought a frog just to try to catch the biggest fish in the pond. In every pond, there's a lot of frogs around, and it's just a bigger bait, and I'm gonna try to catch the biggest fish that lives in the pond. But most important thing when you're fishing ponds is get permission. Make sure that you have permission to fish in that pond. And most people will let you. Some owners may want you to let the fish go, which is fine. But most importantly, go ask and make sure they let you fish. You know, I've never fished in this pond. And the cool thing about it is you learn what lives in there. Over the years, I've had some ponds that tend to have big fish in it, and some ponds that had a lot of fish, and you didn't catch many big ones. So it's kind of fun just to go and fish and see what lives in them. A lot of people, when they walk up to a pond, they're going to stand, you know, they're going to stand right here. I know my kids do the same thing, and they're going to throw right out in the middle, right out in the middle. A lot of times I'll walk around the pond if it's not too snaky. I'll walk around the pond and I want to throw like down the bank. Oh, there's another bite right there. A fish wants to like push bait up against the bank. So I want to just kind of throw around the bank, and then once I kind of cover everything, I'll make a few casts out in the middle, and then I'll move on around the pond if the pond's too big and I can't reach from one side to the other. So what do I look for whenever I'm fishing a pond? A pond is a lot like the creek, the lake, or anywhere else. You're going to look for things that the fish can live on, which is like a limb or a log or grass. One of the best things in a pond is shade, and the reason being is most ponds are pretty shallow, so these fish can get over there in the shade, you know, when the sun's high like it is, and lay in the shade. And actually the water's probably 10 degrees at least cooler in the shade than it is out in the middle. And you can catch a fish anywhere, don't get me wrong, but most consistently you're going to catch them around something or in the shade. I've had a great time today making this video for you guys. Hopefully you learned something, you know, from fishing ponds, walking the bank on the lake, and fishing creeks. That's how I grew up. I didn't grow up with a bass boat when I was little, so most important thing is to get out there and have fun. You know, it really breaks my heart that we don't get to have the fishing day this year, but we will be back next year, and you know, thank the Cherokee Nation for having that. Thank Lou's for always being a big sponsor and providing all the rods and reels. It's really cool at the event to go back. My favorite thing is to see people come back each year. You know, they have a little sister and another little brother, and they just keep coming back, and to see the looks on people's faces. So again, had fun doing this. Hopefully you learned something, and remember, just get out, go fishing, and have fun.